Yeah, so Steve Thompson from PCSG, also Vice Chair of BIM4M2, so there's quite a few of us here today. Previously, I was the BIM and Digital Manager for Tata Steel Europe, and so I joined PCSG as a consultancy in January this year. I'm currently seconded to the BIM task group to look at how we can improve the sharing of product data through the life cycle of an asset and actually the life cycle of a product as well. So I'll cover some of those areas. So just a bit of a high-level overview. Obviously in 2011, a report was produced suggesting a government strategy in terms of how we can take advantage of BIM, Building Information Modelling. And as a result of that, the government launched their 4-year initiative to develop towards level 2 BIM implementation for April this year. Just a kind of basic overview from me. One of the key requirements, or one of the key aims of that program, was to get to the stage we are now, where everyone is now starting to talk about data. So you're probably all familiar with some of these phrases. We still get some of this today from different areas. So whether it's just adding complexity and cost that we maybe don't need within the industry, whether it's just 3D modeling, 3D CAD, down to actually this really starts to make sense. So if you speak to some of our Danish colleagues, they've been using BIM in some ways since around 2007. And the first thing they did as a government was to mandate it quite heavily in 2007. And when it came to 2011, the next round of regulation change, they realized that although everything wasn't working absolutely perfectly, most of the industry had realized the benefits of using BIM to the point where it's achieving most of its goals. Going through to collaboration, obviously the benefits of collaboration. If BIM is used effectively, it relies very heavily on collaboration and supports collaboration. And then, so where we are now in terms of looking at where we're going in the future, it's a key requirement that we start to understand the importance of data and to connect things with people and to connect across different sectors. Just as an example or an illustration as to why data is important across different sectors, there's a report by McKinsey in 2013, there's quite a few of these reports now, but this was the first one that really caught my eye. So there's they looked at disruptive technology across all different sectors and industries in the UK and internationally. Both of these are logarithmic scales, but basically from top to bottom there is the potential economic impact of these 14 different technologies that they identified. And from left to right is the hype, which was measured in terms of, I think it was number of articles on that subject over a period of a year. What's interesting here is the top 5 potential economic impacts all rely on digital processes, sharing data across different sectors. Some of the other ones do as well, obviously, but the most important thing is that's where the significant value is. Through data, through BIM, and through Internet of Things and so on, it's really important that we don't forget, though, the practical challenges we have as a planet. So if you think of global trends such as urbanization, global population, urban population is expected to increase by 2.5 billion between now and 2050. So just to put that into context, just to house that difference, never mind supporting it through schools and everything else, that's the equivalent of building every single day between now and 2050, 2,500 apartment buildings, each housing 100 occupants. So the logistical challenge of doing that means obviously that we need to do things very differently to how we've done it in the past. Part of that is how we start to use resources more effectively. So again, we can't continue to use resources at the level we have before. We need to start to recuperate that. From a manufacturer's perspective, there's obviously a huge potential value in understanding how you can reuse your products, reuse your assets, and how that can feed back into the flow of construction projects. To enable some of this value, well, obviously one of the important things to do is understand the sharing of data isn't just a one-way process. So it isn't a case of just manufacturers sharing information on their products to the rest of the supply chain, specification and so on. It's also about understanding how data can work the other way, so how data can assist manufacturers within their own businesses, whether it's through logistics or the flow of information from, it could be point of specification, point of sale, all the way through to production and back out again until that product is installed. So it needs to be a two-way exchange of information, not just throwing the information over the wall. So the work I'm looking at for the task group at the moment, I say, is to improve the flow of information, provide a more standardized approach to sharing product information through the life cycle of an asset. The basic concept here for me is that it's about the flow of information. It's not just about templates at fixed stages for exchange of information. So it should be about how the information flows through everyone within the supply chain, whether it's, again, the manufacturer, the subcontractor, the distributor, whether it's the asset owner through the life cycle of the asset. So we need to start to understand how information flows between those different disciplines, where the real value is. So there's a lot of information at the moment that could be of real value and benefit to the distribution and supply chain that actually currently isn't covered, and that's where some of the real potential savings are in delivery. We also need to understand that if we're going through a digital process, so the blue line as opposed to the grey line, a more traditional process here, that the discussions on your products or your systems happen earlier on in the process. It doesn't mean that everything's specified earlier in the process, but you need to start to understand the logic behind your products and systems. So that's from an individual project's perspective. And again, obviously a lot of the discussions around BIM at the moment, level 2 BIM, are to do with individual projects, how we have the flow of information through those projects. We also need to start to think, though, if we're going to get the real value from data, especially going forwards, is how we apply that approach across, whether it's portfolios or groups of projects. It could be for an individual client, it could be for a complete sector. And actually how we start to do that across territories as well, so how we start to share information more effectively internationally. As someone mentioned earlier, the other issue here is a lot of the buildings, the majority of buildings and the built environment that will be in place by 2050 has already been built. So how can you retrofit effectively some of this technology, some of this data technology? The answer is you can do it. There are a number of technologies already in development to effectively retro BIM. And some of those we're already starting to see advantages from, but you need to start to understand, again, the real value of data, the real information requirements, and then how you can use that information more effectively. Going back to the circular economy then, the other thing we need to think of is when those buildings are replaced, how do we take those products, those systems, those assets, and replace them back into new projects? So again, not starting from scratch as we've done in the past. So in terms of the government's mandates in the UK, to get to where we are now for April this year has been a huge challenge, as we all know. But it has been a huge achievement, as much as any, because people are really starting to talk about and understand data and the exchange of data. But this slide I did present it last year at Ecobuild, and actually it still holds water for me today. There's still some of the things that are in development that will be some of the biggest challenges for me over the next few years for the construction industry. Well, we've got to understand that where we are now in terms of level 2, it really is just the kind of foothills of where we actually need to get to. So if you look from the manufacturing sector, the product manufacturing sector, we've started to look at what we need to do or what we can achieve to support government over the next 10 years. So start to develop a clear strategy as to some of the areas where data and digital and product information can start to add value to the complete asset. And I know you can't read all that there, but I'm sure you'll get copies of the slides afterwards. What's important here, though, is, again, having the end in mind effectively and understanding the links and connectivity between these different areas. One of the areas, connectivity between things and people, so the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything, is the development of sensors, RFID tags. Does anyone know the smallest tags you can get, RFID tags that are out there at the moment? How small they are? 0.15 millimeters by 0.15 millimeters, so it's basically dust. So you can imagine if you could start to track where products and materials are through their life cycle, it's easier to, again, in terms of the circular economy, pull those resources back at the end of life. The other thing is the capability, again, someone mentioned before, to help deliver this. And we've got to understand that no one organisation or no one individual can do this on their own. Collaboration across supply chains is going to be crucial to this. And actually, we're starting to see collaboration across complete sectors and industries as a result. So in the short term, in terms of support, BIM4M2, if you're a product manufacturer or distributor, we have lots of information on there. Actually, we found out last week, internationally people have started to looking at that a lot more as well and use that as a source for their information, which is great. So there's some real guidance there if you're a manufacturer. Beyond that, there are other special interest groups as well, so the BIM4 communities. So again, they're reassessing at the moment how they can best help industry, but that's effectively a two-way process, so how they can be used to help government share the message and spread the word as to what the importance of this, but also the other way around, acting as a voice for industry into government. That's it from me, hopefully on time.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks, well, Steve, quick question for me, so we are up against it time-wise, but you'd say there is a fear that it adds costs and complexity, and I suppose the answer to that is that it does, unless you actually really extract the real value from that data. I mean, that's the big challenge, I presume, for you, is making people aware of how they can extract that data, value from that data.
Yeah, but it's also about understanding your position in the supply chain, your individual business requirements and strategy. So basically we should be using data and sharing of information to help deliver your existing strategies. It shouldn't really be seen as an add-on. It is at the moment because it's not probably as understood as well as it could be.
Because if we do, it will therefore be, it will just be an extra cost if you don't get the real value from it.
But you've got to understand the value of what you're doing as well. So again, at my previous role, for example, pulling together a common way of describing information across something like 7,000 products, 40 different countries, you can do that by structuring your data more effectively, and the efficiencies you get from that are significant.